All right, this video is for Dananjaya Ranawake, and if I murdered that, I am so sorry. Okay, so the big thing that you're doing is you've got the right idea and you've got a little texture going on, but for the most part, most of your brushes are a soft brush. And so one of the things that you want to do with this is really define your elements. And what that means is like I'm going to just show you my brush. My brush sets are huge, and I don't actually use nearly 99% of these. I just have a couple that I like and I use. But something like this, the first thing that you want to do is you want to create hardened, defined edges. So I'm going to just kind of do little bits and pieces. So instead of having, and I'm going to cut this up. So instead of having like your uh, pieces like so, I'm just going to kind of break up the waterfall here. So I'm going to take this rock, and I'm assuming this rock is on the same plane, so I'm just going to kind of break up, and we're going to use this rock here. And I'm just cutting out, and I'm just kind of diagonaling the shapes a little bit and kind of playing with it. And so we're going to cut these out, all right? And then the next rock that I'm going to do is, this is the foreground rock, so I'm going to actually cut this out here. And we're just going to cut that out. Okay, and put that above there. And then finally, I'm going to take the rest of the bottom here, and we're going to cut that out, and then I'm going to just take some of these green pieces, which I'm not really understanding what they are, but we're going to cut those out as well. Oops. Okay, so I have these four pieces, and for the most part, this works fine. I'm going to sample the colors, and we'll just go with kind of a soft round here. And I'm just going to sample these colors, and by doing so, I'm cutting out kind of that silhouette. And I'm making that silhouette a little bit more defined, if you can see that. Same thing over here. And so by defining that silhouette just a hair more, just grabbing some of these colors here. All right. So by defining that silhouette a little bit more, you're getting a little bit more information out of there. And you might even want to go in and erase. And I'm just going to use kind of some of these pieces just to kind of break apart a little bit more of that concept. And then we're going to go back to this and paint back in there some of those pieces. So you see how I defined the layers now a little bit more? Same thing on this one here. I'm going to just lock this layer, and I'm going to kind of put in, do you see how that's now more defined? And then I'm going to go back on this one here, and it separates the elements a little bit more. And that's what you want to do, is you want to make sure those elements are separated. And then what you're going to do is you've got your main focus of light right here. So the problem with your main focus of light is that you don't have the shadows coming in from the light. So if we take and kind of implement um, this process here, and I'm just kind of putting the shadows here, and I'm going to put a darker shadow system here, and we're just going to block this out here, and I'm going to put a darker shadow here. So do you see how that's implementing a little bit more form and light? And then I can go on this one and create a cast shadow from this piece here, maybe even go backwards. Now, with that in mind, and then I've got this piece here, which I'm going to go back and grab some of these dark colors now and just kind of implement like so. Okay, so with those pieces in, with that all set and kind of put in there, I've got now a sense of foreground, middle ground, and I need a little bit of background too. So I'm going to go back into this one here and simply create a new layer. And with just this brush here, I'm just going to create kind of a dark purple, light blue. I'm probably going to pick something like this. And with this layer, I'm just going to kind of add in. Do you see how by adding that in, that now gives me separate elements, foreground, middle ground, background? And that's what you want to achieve by simply putting that in there. Now I'm breaking down the different elements. I'm going to just go back in here and make sure that this, oops, this is erased real quick here, like so, just to clean that up. And I'm going to go in and kind of clean this up here. Okay, now with that said, now that I've got my layers down, you want to think about your individual lighting, and you want to think about the rock formation. Right now you have a lot of individual rocks going on, and that's fine and dandy, but the problem is that the rocks they're all kind of blurred together. So if you're going to add in rocks, and I'm going to just do kind of work on one foundation here. So I've got the layer locked. I'm going to go in my brush mode, and I'm going to grab this is an oddball brush. I just made this shape and kind of put it in there. But I'm going to just grab this brush, and I'm going to start by blocking out some of the base colors that you want to reflect your rocks on. All right, and so you can see, then I'm going to do some shadows here, and you see how by making these harder lines, the shadows now stick out a little bit more, and things look a little bit more interesting. And that's what you want to do to kind of break out the idea that the rocks are individualized pieces and that they have their own sense of kind of variation to it. And so you see how by simply putting this down, and it's really quick, really fast. I'm not worried about the individual detail in there. I'm worried more about the shape and color and dynamics of that process. And so I'm just kind of popping out some of these dark shapes here. And so you see now, even putting in some of the smaller shadows like so, like this, those smaller shadows now have much more defined shapes. And we can do the same thing here by adding in these kind of block ideas. And I'm just kind of roughing this in here, and like so. And then we're going to grab those purples again and add in those individual colors like so. So, and again, do you see how just by doing something that simple, I'm really blocking down those colors. Now I'm going to add in those dark tones as the tertiary shadows, and you can see then by doing that, I'm getting a much simpler variation. It's about how it reads as a whole, not how it reads as a base concept there. And so that is something that you want to really pay attention to from that aspect, is how do your colors read as a whole. Same thing down here. You know, I've added in kind of this base idea of here's, you know, my concept, and now let's add in the bright dark contrast of said shadows, and we can even add in, you know, just different, like so, and then let's add in the dark contrast of this is how it's kind of forming out. And so those are the things that you want to look at, are how that concept is kind of coming together from a whole standpoint. You know, just by adding in cracks and different things here that you want to add in those individual pieces. Now then you've got some plants and stuff like that on here. That's where I would use some sort of plant brush, and I'm just going to really quickly grab in something basic here, and I'm not worried about color. I'm going to just go over the whole thing and kind of oops, I don't want that. You know, and I'm just adding in little bits and pieces of this color here. Let me do a little bit of shape dynamics. Let's do the jitter flip, and I'm just going to do a little bit of scatter and something like that, and so on and so forth. But now with this, I can add in my greens, and I can add in, you know, the idea that this has got a little bit more vegetation in there. Now this brush is, I'm just adding in real quick swatches here, but this is adding the idea that there is more to the scene than just that rough concept of what you've had before. And this is where I'm adding in my details and things like that. And then it's basically just a secondary layer. Now, if you want, you know, your vines and things like that in there, I'm just going to add in, I'm just going to see what this looks like. Nope, I don't like that brush. Something like that. So I'm going to just add a new layer here real quick just to kind of play. And I'm just kind of, and this is probably a little bit darker, but if you want something like this, those darker lines kind of add in a little bit more emphasis onto, you know, what's going on as far as, you know, where the vines are coming from, and, you know, just the idea of that idea of how things grow together. And I'm going to just add some veins and things like that. And I could even go in and add in maybe like a little tree here, and I'm just kind of rough in that concept of maybe there was once a tree here of something like that. I don't like it, so I'll probably just kind of say nope, I don't like that, and move on. But that gives you that concept that you're looking for. And then we can just simply go with the brush that we've got here, and with your waterfall, you want to look at the reference and look at how things are falling over this. So you'd have the water coming over like so, and we're just gonna kind of splash some of that water over here, and it's going to foam up into a little bit more white up here, and a white over here. So it's these little things that's going to give you kind of that sense of reality that I think you're looking for. So think about individual colors, think about hard lines, and then you can blend the hard lines in together. All right, I hope that helps out. If you like, subscribe.